Hey students, how are you all doing? It is evening time, and I'm going to record a lecture for you. I know that a lot of you are eager to get started. This lecture is for Mexican American Studies 2327, Unit 1. Unit 1, there's not a lot of reading to do in Unit 1. There's a lot of listening to do and a lot of thinking to do, okay? I will be giving you some reading to do, but it won't be as intense as we're coming on. Now, remember, the book that you need is the Zaragoza Vargas book, Crucible of Struggle, and this is what it looks like right here. Let's see if I can get the glare off. Crucible of Struggle, and you won't need it until Unit 2. Okay, so don't worry about it for now. Go ahead and order it. Any edition will do. Usually, there's not a lot of difference in the editions. So that's the book you will need. I'm sorry if you got the Mexicanos book. I got a lot of complaints about the Mexicanos book. It was a very, very, actually, not a bad book, but I don't have it here. But it was just a very plain text. It was a bit heavy, a bit pithy. Um, it's a good book. I mean, I kind of like it better, but the students like Crucible of Struggle better by Zaragoza Vargas. From Oxford University Press, and they actually do a pretty good job of selling you those books at a fairly good price. Okay, now what I'm going to start with right now is your lecture notes, and that's really the only thing that you have under Unit 1 right now is lecture notes. So with that said, let's start with Unit 1, Part 1. And they usually go Unit 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Now, sometimes there'll be Unit 1, and then there'll be Unit 1, Part 1, and then subunit A, B, C, D, and so on. And then we'll go to Unit 2, and then A, B, C, and stuff like that. The first thing we're going to talk about is identity, okay? And identity is really important, okay? I'm going to try and make these videos about 15 to 20 minutes long, and hopefully they'll be of some help. And I want you to think about these questions because I may ask you these questions on the exam, and some of these questions don't have a right or wrong answer because they are ideological questions or idiosyncratic. Idiosyncratic. There, I try to say it too fast. They're about how you feel. Okay, and one of the things about history and that you have to understand is that history is very provocative and it's always subject to interpretation. Okay, and it's a lot of times historical theories just have to be plausible. Okay, provable. Is it possible that this could have happened? And then you can postulate from there. The first thing we ask, and one of the things that I wanted to clarify before I get started is that this is Mexican American history. This is a history of Mexican Americans from pre Columbian times to present times in the United States of America, in colonial America. So we really don't start it being the United States until after 1848. Okay? The other thing that I want to point out is we're not going to beat up on anybody. We're not going to beat up on the white man. We're not going to beat up on Asians. We're not going to beat up on anything. The things are going to get pretty intense in the class, but uh, we're not angry at anybody. I'm just trying to present history to you in a way that you can understand it, and for you to walk away with the best that you can from it, and make your own, form your own opinions from that. Okay. I'm not encouraging you to go and start a revolution or a rebellion or to be ugly to people or anything like that. It's just for us to better understand our origins and why we do a lot of the things that we do. Because at the end of the day, we are just as American as Anglo Americans and Latin Americans and South Americans and Central Americans. Remember that America is a continent, it's not a country. So the Americas are from Canada to Tierra del Fuego, that whole expanse, it's continental landmass. Okay, so let's start with a question of identity, Unit 1, Roman numeral 1, sub question A. And I'm not going to do this every time. Next time I'll just dive into the lecture and say this is where I left off and so on. What are we? That's the first question that we ask ourselves. What is our makeup? Well, we're going to simplify it. And most of us, myself included, yo mismo, and I will speak Spanish from time to time, but when I say something in Spanish, I'll always say it in English also. When I say yo mismo, me, uh, I'm a mestizo, okay? And I'm very comfortable with that, okay? I'm very comfortable with that. I'm very comfortable in my skin. I'm very comfortable with my brownness. Uh, when I look at myself in the mirror, or I look at, well, there's a good looking Mexican right there. Uh, I don't have any problem uh, saying I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in the United States. My father was born in the United States. My grandfather was born in the United States. His father was born in the United States. So I have my bloodline has been in Texas since they founded Nuevo Santander in the 1750s. So it is ironic that when Mexico when it was under Spain, we were Spaniards or mestizos under Spanish law. When it became Mexico, then we were Mexicans, and when it became Texas, we were Tejanos, and when it became the United States, we were U.S. citizens. Okay, that's the way that I have always been. I'm originally from Laredo, Texas, from the area of Nuevo Santander, north of Monterrey. The Villarreals come from Monterrey, and from there they come from the Pyrenees, from Villarreal in Villarreal, Spain. We are known as Sephardists. Most of the Villarreals are converted Jews. We could not afford to leave during the conquest, so we converted to Catholicism. And then, as soon as we got a chance, we came to the New World. Okay? Now, every once in a while, you'll have somebody that will say, well, I am more Spanish than I am Mexican. Okay, whatever. Just agree with them. There's no sense in you fighting with them or saying that they're not. It's very hard for them to find out if they really are. And one of the reasons that we do know that most of the nucleus of Mexicanos or mestizos is because the Spaniards did not bring women for 156 years. The only women that they brought were women that they brought with their governors or their colonels or their generals. But a sergeant, like in my case, when my ancestor who came over here, the first Villarreal that came over, he was a lowly sergeant. And he did not get to bring his woman over. So when he got to the New World, after the Pope passed the Sublimis Dies, or El Sublime de Dios, the Sublimis Dios, uh, where the Pope says that Native Americans are now human. And they do this so the Spaniards could marry these women, and so the children of this union could be mestizos, and they wouldn't be bastards. They would be recognized by the church as a member of Spanish American society in Mexico. Now, Mexico was called La Nueva España. Okay, so you're gonna have at the very bottom, you're gonna have Indians, Native Americans, Indios, and then you're gonna have mulattoes, which are half Indian or half Spanish and half black, and then you're gonna have mestizos, and then you're gonna have criollos. Now, criollos, for example, George Washington was Creole. A criollo is the son or the daughter of a pure Spaniard and a pure Spaniard union, but he was born in Mexico. He wasn't born in Spain. So you'll have a mother and father that were Spanish, and they moved to Mexico or somewhere else, and they have a baby. Even though they are from Spanish parents, they're still not considered 100% Spanish because they were born in the New World, and they call Creoles. The very top of the rung, or peninsulares, peninsulars. Now, the reason they call them that is that Spain is a peninsula. If you look at it, it is an island that is connected by a little sliver of land to the rest of Europe, and that's why they call them peninsulares, porque son de la península. They are from the peninsula, okay? And those are what we call blue bloods, okay? The Creoles are also considered blue bloods, But the highest rank that they can achieve in the military is a colonel. They can never be they can become generals later on, but they're not seen as 100%. Now, what a lot of really wealthy Spaniards do is that once they find out that their wives are pregnant, they send them back to Spain so they can have their kids over there and they can be considered blue bloods, okay? Can you imagine being pregnant and then being sent back to the New World to take care of things and then come back? It's brutal. Okay, so what are we? Well, I would say that I am a mixture, or and most Mexicans are a mixture of indigenous on our mother's side and Spaniard on our paternal side. Okay, and I'm very comfortable with that. What's the percentage? I don't know. Now, on our indigenous side, we're indigenous. That's the one thing that we know we are. On our Spanish side, it gets a little bit more complicated. We could have possibly some blood from North Africa. We can have some Roman blood in us when the Romans conquered Spain. We can also have some Goth blood. We can have some Burgundian blood. There is just a whole array of bloodlines that we could have because of so many cultures that conquered Spain, especially the Romans, okay? Our language, Spanish, is Latin based and it was given to us by the Romans. Prior to the Romans, Spain was just this non homogeneous group of tribes, barbaric tribes. And when the Romans came, they put them together. If you watch the movie Gladiator, I forget the guy's name, but he was a Spaniard. A lot of the best generals that the Romans had were Spaniards. Okay, so that's one thing that I want you to know, and we'll talk more about this as we go along. We're going to talk about identity a lot. How do I identify? I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm an ethnic Mexican. I don't even call myself a Mexican American. I just call myself a Mexican because I'm in America. It's obvious. I live in the continent, right? Now, this is where I'm going to kind of, now that you're saying, oh, I kind of understand what he's saying. Now I'm going to complicate it for you. Okay, since we were born of the conquest, were we born out of triumph or defeat? Right? The Spaniards come over here. Did my ancestor, when he took that indigenous woman, did she go willingly or did he rape her or did he force her? You know what I mean? When La Malinche goes with Cortés, why does she go with him? That's why a lot of times they say eres un malinchista, because you gave up. So those are questions that we're going to ask ourselves. When Tlatelolco falls, when Cortés conquers the Aztec, that's a very painful birth. We give up a culture that we knew, and we assume a second class culture that we are. But remember, the Aztec were not the nicest people in the world, and we're gonna talk about this later on when we talk about the Maya and all, because I'm gonna talk about all that in this unit. Okay, it's a fairly long unit. One of the reasons that Cortés is so easily able to conquer was simply and because he abused the smaller tribes. That when the Spaniards come, the Spaniards say, hey, you don't have to worry about sacrifices, you don't have to worry about dying, you don't have to worry about anything if you give your life to Christ, and there's a heaven and a hell. Where the Aztecs did not have anything that resembled heaven. It was all hell. 7 levels of hell. Like there was hell and then there was super hell. Okay? We Mexicans are governed by Catholicism and indigenous religion, just like the Irish. Our religion has a very, very, very heavy connotation of indigenous religion. If you look at, the Aztec had a day for every calendar year. That's why you have El Dia de tu Santo. You may have an uncle, his name is, Nicolás Epifanio Gutierrez. The reason he has that strange middle name is because the day he was born was the name of Santo Epifanio, where, well, in reality, the Aztec or the Maya, or the tribes had every day they celebrated the log, the dog, the hummingbird, the leopard. So whatever day you were born, it was there, And I used to I asked a professor of mine one time. It's like, well, did the Aztec ever like celebrate the day of the dog crap? Because I mean, what if you were born on dog crap day or something like that? And he said, no, I don't think there was. It was usually a deity, the day of the monkey, the day of the tapir, and a lot of people are doing that now. They're going back and they're finding out what their Catholic Dia de Santo was, or what their indigenous patron animal was, and they're naming their children that. I have a former professor that named his children like that. One of the girls' name is Clavel, which means carnation, and the other one's his name is Marisol, because of course Cempasúchil. Okay, Sochi. Sochi is a bastardization of Cempasúchil, so they name her Xochitl, and it's also Xochimilco. So there was in the 1990s and in the 1920s under Frida Kahlo really upswing in indigenismo, and we're seeing it again right now. All of my children are named with traditional Spanish names, but remarkably enough, the most popular boy name in Mexico last year in 2018 was Brian, and the most popular girl name in Mexico was Kaylee. Okay, so go figure. Be proud of who you are. Name your children. I always wanted to name one of my kids Maria Guadalupe, but my mom forbade me from doing that. Maybe I'll tell you why later on. Okay, maybe somebody can guess or something. I don't know. All right. That's why our religion, our Mexican religion, is so curious. That's why we have Day of the Dead. That's why, we celebrate, you know, things like Dia de los Muertos, or when we have El Dia de la Guadalupe, okay? Or, it really for Christmas, it's El Dia 12, and then we have El Dia de los Santos, or things like that. And remember, Mexican culture is very fatalistic, and the reason that it's fatalistic is simply and because of our origins, of where we come from. Okay? I'm thinking that this lecture is going to be longer. They're probably going to be about 30, 40 minutes, and that's usually how long the lectures were in class. So bear with me. We'll all enjoy it, and you'll get the information that you need. Okay? I'll try not to bore you too much. So, are we Spaniards trapped inside indigenous bodies? I mean, do any of you feel indigenous? Are you ashamed of being indigenous? I'm not. I always say, a mí me gustan los frijoles y las tortillas y qué pinche onda. You know what I mean? For those of you that didn't understand, yeah, I like my beans and my tortillas, and what do you have a problem with that? I'm not afraid. I'm not embarrassed to play Mexican music. I'm not embarrassed to embrace who I am. So, no, I'm not a Spaniard trapped inside an indigenous body, but I'm not an indigenous person either, because I'm not. I'm a hybrid of Spanish and an indigenous culture, so I'm a mestizo. Soy un mexicano. That's the best I can tell you. And people will tell me, no, but you're an American because you were born in America, so speak English. No, chale, vato. I am that individual that can go in and out of both worlds. 1 minute I can sit here and talk to you in English and be serious, and 2 minutes later I can be with my vatos over here, and oye, ábrete una chela, no, vamos a tomarnos una vironga y pon la carnita, no. The idea is that we as Mexicans possess something that very few cultures have, that we can weave in and out of two cultures in an almost stealth-like way, And for a long time, it was frowned upon, and it shouldn't be frowned upon because it's who we are. Why should we be ashamed of who we are? There was a time where being called a Mexican was a bad word. Well, that those days don't exist anymore. Okay, it's like saying, like I have a friend of mine who's black, and when I was got here because I come from an area where there was not a lot of African Americans, I said, "What are you?" He said, "I'm black," and I was like, "Okay," and he says, "Why?" Because you've always been taught that black is associated with negativity, and no, and that's why I always say I'm a brown person. I'm a Mexican. I'm not saying that anybody else is beneath me. I'm just saying that I am proud to be who I am. I'm not a Spaniard and I'm not indigenous. Now, if Mexico or the United States ever wants to recognize us, then yeah, I'll get my indigenous card. But they won't do that. And the reason that they won't do that is that it'll move us from minority status, okay? It'll make indigenous people a majority, and that will create some problems, okay? Okay, about 90% of the population is mestizo. So why don't we call ourselves that? Well, because mestizo means mixed, mestizaje, una revoltura, un mingongo, right? Well, the reason we don't call ourselves that is because for a long time had a negative connotation, and it shouldn't have a negative connotation. As I said before, we should be proud of ourselves regardless of what anybody thinks. There's nothing wrong with being proud of who we are. We're not xenophobic. We don't say that we're better than anybody else. As I said before, we are bound by political and religious lines. We are. When you look at costumbres like quinceañeras and compadrazgo, compadrismo, que la comadre y el compadre. I have a friend of mine down the street. His name is Chris Barron, and I was asked to help prepare the meal for his daughter's quinceañera. I was honored to do that. That makes me like part of the family now. You know what I mean? That's a very Mexican thing. Now, Chris is Mexican, but he's from California. So later on, I'm going to teach you the difference between Californios and Tejanos. We're still Mexican, but we do things a little differently. We eat different foods. We're not all the same, and that's another thing that I'm going to teach you here, is that even though we are a homogenous group, you can't just say all of you Mexicans are the same. Oaxaqueños are different than people from Jalisco, as are different people from Nuevo León, as are people from Durango or Mexico City. The people from Mexico City, they're like completely different. They live in an autonomous federal state within a country. It's like people from Washington, D.C. So calling Mexicans all the same would be like comparing somebody from California and saying that a white person from California is the same as a white person from Texas as is a white person from New York. They're not. We're completely different people. We eat different things. It's kind of like the time old what do you call fight between In-Out Burgers and Whataburger. What I don't consider I will agree that In-Out Burgers are good, okay, but it sure as hell isn't a Whataburger, right? So that in itself are the things that we're going to talk about. I'm going to put a discussion board later on about a concha, el pan de dulce, and the gentrification of pan de dulce. That's one of the things we have to be careful. Like when you go eat at one of those taco places that can't remember them because I don't eat there a lot. Chipotle, okay? Or you eat tacos at Jack in the Box or at Taco Bell. That's gentrification. Do I eat Taco Bell? Yeah. Is it real Mexican food? No. Give me a definition of real Mexican food. You may want to talk about De Mi Rancho a Tu Cocina on YouTube, right? But that's localized Mexican food. I can take you to places in Mexico City. I can blindfold you and take you into a restaurant and you would swear that you're in Europe. Because there is no such thing as a definite Mexican dish. There are dishes that are local, right? There's a thing on Netflix about tacos, okay? And you learn about all the different kinds of tacos that there are in Mexico, right? Or a lot of times, or tamales. Tamales from northern Mexico are not like tamales from Veracruzanos or anything like that. Some people use corn husks, some people use tamale leaves. The tamales that my friend Chris's family makes, they use banana leaves a lot of times, right? And they put olives in them. I never did that. I do now. Before, the meat tamales was, una hoja de maíz, una embarrada de masa, y entonces le echabas ahí la carne de puerco, the pork meat or whatever it is, and that was it. Very simple. Maybe a raja de jalapeño or something like that. So things are different. And for those of you that are not Mexican, I want to show you these things. Now, a student would ask me in class, is Rosa's Mexican food? I think that for what you can get in a commercial fast food restaurant, the salsas are pretty Mexican, and it's not bad. Do I go to Taco Tuesdays? Yeah, I do. I like their carne asada or whatever it is that they do. But whenever I want real Mexican food, whatever that is, right, I prepare it here at home, right? And one of the things that I have at school that we're not going to have this year is that I usually have a potluck, right? And I'll say, bring whatever you want. We're not going to be able to have that. But that's what I want you to look. We're going to look at, Mexican cultures we're very political. We're very religious. I always say I'm a traditional Mexican Catholic because I only go to church on Christmas and on Easter, right? And then you go to make fun of all your primas. Ay, mira lo que trae puesto. I can't believe that she's wearing that. Ay, mira, she brought that guy, and what is she doing here? Y que, I know, that's what we do, right? And we go to midnight mass, and it's like Easter, right? Mexicans fast for all la cuaresma y después se ponen bien pedos en Easter. No voy a comer carne, no voy a tomar cerveza for the whole Lent. And then on Good Friday matan la vaca, empieza la barbacoa y traen una traila de vironga y se ponen hasta las teclas. You know what I mean? For those of you that don't understand what Mexicans love to do, and I'm not making fun of them. This is just who we are. We give up something for Lent, beer and meat. Right? And some of them will even be sneaky and say, well, chicken is not considered meat. So they eat a lot of fish during Lent, and they don't drink beer. And then on Good Friday they slaughter a cow and they order like bring 15 kegs because we're gonna have a kegger, right? Or the quinceañera, right? Or we have these huge quinceañeras, and a quinceañera is a very indigenous thing that you do. You always want to participate in a quinceañera, especially if you have daughters. Because when your daughter has her quinceañera, then the people that you helped are going to help you, and it's not going to cost you that much money. What is la quinceañera de Jenny, or what was her name? That a whole bunch of people went. And the same is for a wedding. You have these huge weddings. Why? Because everybody pitches in. It was not uncommon for me to participate in a wedding and for say, well, what are you good for? I'm good for a keg of beer. And then once you're there and you're feeling good and you're dancing, the band says, okay, we're only playing until midnight. And they'll say, okay, I got $100. How much will $100 get me? $100 will get you another 15 minutes. And then somebody will say, well, we're going to give you an hour, so here's $400. That's religious. That is the cementing of ties within family cultures, and that's very indigenous. That is not Spanish, because the Spanish didn't need help from it. They didn't. Getting help from people demonstrated that you were poor, so they did it on their own. So those are very indigenous things. You would never, never, ever not help somebody in a bautismo, in a quinceañera, in anything that they didn't help you with. Because then it's like, oh my God, no les cumplí. No, or you would say, no, pues le ayudamos y no cumplió con nosotros, quedó bien mal. We helped them, and then when it came time for them to help us, they turned their back on us. And that's why you have these really big extended Mexican communities, okay, that are very, very firmly tied. They may hate each other at times, okay, But when the going gets tough, they help each other. And later on, that's going to lead to the thing called a tanda or a sociedad mutualista. We're mutual aid societies, almost like insurance, okay? So why are we proud of being Mexican? Now, well, because why not? You know, I mean, after a while, I got tired of being told that Mexicans were not good. Why? Because we're lazy. Have you ever noticed that when ICE goes looking for Mexicans, they don't go looking for them at home, they go looking for them at work? If they were lazy, they wouldn't go to work, right? I mean, when I drive down the street and I see a roofing crew, 9 times out of 10, they're brown people, you know? Who cooks our food? Who cleans our homes? You know? Who washes dishes at a restaurant? I used to do that before graduate school. You know, we are that. So Mexicanidad, Mexicanness, that's what it is. Lo nuestro, you can't take it away from us. It's as ingrained in us as I don't know, dulce de calabaza, or it's just who we are. It's almost surreal, okay? It's very hard for us to describe ourselves. We each other understand ourselves very perfectly, right? Like even with our verbiage, nombre está machine. How do you explain to a English speaker what machine means? O pinche güey, you know? Those words that we use to communicate una chela. O se me bañó aquel vato. What do you mean? What do you say? He took me a bath. Well, that doesn't sound right. Está bien, yeah, your car's machine, bro. Well, my car's what? It's machine. Well, of course it's a machine. Well, that doesn't. O una caguama. You know what I mean? I mean, we could sit here all day. A lot of these are secret codes, right? We have our own, no vayas a tirar el agua. No, ¿qué pasó? No, pues aquel vato lo agarró la policía y tiró toda el agua. What are you talking? The police got him and he threw the water? No, it's a resemblance of tiró el agua, like when a woman gives birth, her water breaks. When they caught the dude and they busted him and his water broke. He ratted everybody else, We are a culture of broken language and gestures. Even the people that pretend that they're not, like they'll say like, no, que es un naco, un guarachudo, un nopalero. Of course I'm a nopalero. What do you want me to do? And by the way, I do like nopales. There's probably a can, and my wife makes them for me. There's nothing like, every once in a while, once a week, every 2 weeks, unos huevos con salsa y unos nopales. ¿Y qué? You know what? What do you want me to pretend that that's not who I am? You know? I mean, I'm not gonna go as far as letting me somebody call me a beaner because I eat beans, but it's got a derogatory, it's a negative connotation. But yeah, I mean, if you don't like beans, it sucks for you because we make really good ones, and we make really good nopales too, and all of the above. So I want you to look at this. I want you to uh, identify these things and ask yourself these questions. Okay. Now I'm not going to go into part 2 of unit 1 because I go into authors, but I am going to go into the first couple of them. Okay, especially chicanismo. Okay, and I'm going to leave you with that. All right. Why is there a pushback to the word Chicano? Okay. Well, there was a pushback to the word indigenismo when Frida Kahlo was pushing it, and her husband, I forgot his name now. I forgot his name. Diego Rivera. Okay. When there was a push for indigenismo, a lot of people said, "Well, no, we don't want to connect our roots to indigenous because indigenous people are savages. They're nopaleros, barachudos, mixtamaleros. But no, there's nothing wrong. We like tortillas, so we like mixtamal. What do you want me to do about it? Oh, by the way, flour tortillas are not Mexican. They are a border thing, okay? Tortillas de maíz, and the little ones, those are Mexican tortillas, okay? Now, in the 1960s, and we're going to talk about this later on. I mean, as soon as I record this, probably tomorrow. Um, there's a pushback to Chicanismo because Chicanismo was the second time that we struggle to find identity in the 1960s during the Brown Power movement, during the Black Power movement, during the hippie movement. And there was already an established group of Mexican Americans that had been in World War II. We call them the LULACers, LULAC, okay? Those individuals were a group of Mexican Americans that would get together, recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and have the meetings in English, okay? They were a group that wanted to assimilate, okay, by saying if we assimilate, they're going to accept us. Well, that didn't really happen, For example, my father was in a destroyer during the Vietnam War, and he experienced discrimination in Vietnam. You have Mexican Americans that receive Congressional Medals of Honor. By the way, per capita, Mexican Americans are the highest recipients of Congressional Medals of Honor. Okay? I mean, more have been awarded to white because more whites have served. But more Mexican Americans have received Congressional Medals of Honor than any. The very first one was actually in World War One, and the guy had to use his mother's last name so he wouldn't be confused as a Mexican. But we have, a lot of them. There is a big push right now to rename Fort Hood after a Mexican American that received a Congressional Medal of Honor. Hector, I can't remember his last name right now, but he was so badly wounded in Vietnam that when the surgeon went to declare him dead, he spit in the surgeon's face or the nurse's face to let him know that he was not dead. Okay, so we Mexican Americans have served. Unfortunately, I did not serve. I consider it one of my biggest mistakes ever. My father did serve, and he was always very proud of serving. He served in the U.S. Navy. But, I want you to think about what I told you. And remember, those subunits, those letters, those are questions that I can ask you. Okay? And they're not wrong or right, but you have to immerse yourself. You may have to do some research online. You may have to read in some other books, and I will give you some more material to read. But, we're going to talk about this, and right now, uh, there is a very big push for Mexicanness. Some people say, "Well, I'm not a Chicano, and I'm a Mexican American." That's fine. I'm not going to criticize you for calling yourself that. All right. I'm going to say, whatever you want to call yourself is fine with me. Just don't come and tell me you're not Mexican, and it's like, no, bro, traes el nopal en la frente, bro. Or like when you say, I don't speak English, I don't speak Spanish, I only speak English because I'm in America. No, be proud of who you are. Okay. End of story. Um, this went on to about 38 minutes. So in the other ones, I won't have to do the introduction. So I'll try to keep them to about 30 minutes of time. But I would start, this is material. This is a lecture that's going to be on your exam. For those of you that did not or were saying like we're getting antsy, well, now you have an assignment. Listen to this lecture. Okay, if there is any way that I can improve my lectures, let me know. If I'm talking too loud, if I'm moving around too much, let me know. If the background is distracting or whatever. The other thing, make sure that you subscribe to my channel because I put a lot of good stuff there. And then later on, I'll ask you for extra credit if you subscribe to my daughter's channel. My daughter is actually a real actress, like de veras, machine, not like a wannabe actress, but she's a theater and performing actress. Emilia, that's really her name. Emilia Gloria Villarreal. My son's name, I'll tell you all my children's name. My oldest daughter's name, who is 30, is Emilia Gloria Villarreal. She's named after my ex wife's best friend and my grandmother, Gloria. My son name is Guillermo Andres. He is named after a very good friend of mine and my father-in-law, Andres. My third child, actually my third oldest child, when I am remarried, my daughter Chase Hardy. Uh, I she is my daughter, but she's had another father, but I raised her since she was little, so she's mine. And then I have Sofia Alejandra, okay, Villarreal, and she's named after the Empress Sofia and Alejandra because we kind of like that name at the time. Okay, she calls herself Sofia, or I call her Fia, but I named her Sofia with a P, and she wanted Sofia with an F. So go figure, right? And then I have Catarina Isabella. She's named after Catherine the Great and Isabella the Catholic. Okay, Catarina, Catherine the Great, and Isabella the Catholic. All right. So there you got it. And then I have my son, the youngest one. His name is Armando Enrique Villarreal. Now, the reason I finally call my last one Armando is by that time I was already successful and I felt now I feel comfortable I can give my name to my son. But we called him Enrique because when my wife was pregnant, my daughter Isabella would say, "This is my baby Henry," and she would rub my wife's belly. So we called him Enrique, right? Henry is Spanish for Henry is Enrique. Everybody calls him Henry, the boy Henry, so go figure. But their names are all Mexican, and my wife doesn't have a problem with that. Uh, and for those of you that asked, no, my wife did not take my last name. Her last name is Spindle. I am married to a white girl, okay, who thinks she's a Mexican, right? I think she's a white girl trapped inside a Mexican's body or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, se me está acabando la voz. My voice is running out. 42 minutes is plenty, so you have plenty to listen to. Remember to like the video if you like it. Let your parents watch it if they want to question who they are. I'm open to any suggestions, critical and constructive criticism, negative or positive, and just let me know. You know, I'll talk to you all later. Take care. Be good.